Well, good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, and I hope you're up to having a good week and got a good start with it yesterday. It's good to be back with you this morning. We're talking this morning about Joshua chapter 5 and chapter 6, and we've been looking at what is your Jericho? Obviously, for Joshua, his Jericho was Jericho. And he was standing out on the plains of Jericho, a little ways from Gilgal, where they were encamped, and he was looking at Jericho, and he could see that high wall and how impossible the situation was for this band of Israelites to take over and to conquer Jericho. Now, and we talked about how there are going to be a lot of Jerichos in our life, some of our own making and some that just jump up in front of us. And we've got to go through them. And we're looking at some words that Joshua learned when he was standing there. And the first word that we learned was his strength and where his strength comes from. And you remember the man who had the sword of strength drawn. And Jericho, he appeared before Joshua, and Joshua said, "Are you on our side or their side?" He said, "No, I didn't come to take sides. I came to take over." And so Joshua learned the first word that he had to understand was strength and where it came from. Now, the second word we're going to look at this morning is that Joshua had to learn a strategy. Now, when God does something, folks, he doesn't need a strategy. God doesn't need a strategy, and the reason he doesn't is because he speaks it into existence. For example, God didn't have a strategy about the universe. He spoke and light became. God doesn't need strategy. But the way God has designed us, we need a strategy. Because God communicates through us, and he uses men, he uses women, he uses us to accomplish his will. But sometimes he gives us a plan or a strategy. And for Joshua, he had to listen to God. When he fell on his face, it says that the place where you're standing is holy in chapter 5. And he said, so Joshua did what he told him to do, take off your sandals for the place where you're standing, and Joshua did so. The first part of strategy is listening to God. We need to listen to God and get into his word. Listen to chapter 6. It says, now Jericho was tightly shut up because of the Israelites. No one went out, no one came in. They had heard what God had accomplished through them. And so they were a little bit fearful, but then they had those big walls. So they shut everybody in. And then the Lord, verse 2, it says, then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men. Joshua, look, I have already delivered them. It's as good as done because I say it's done. Folks, we need to get in the Word and see what God has already done. We need to understand that God has made some promises that we can take to the bank, literally. I mean, and so the first step in developing a strategy of God is to listen to God. Listen to him. He says, when the Lord said to Jericho, see, I've delivered Jericho into your hand along with its king and its fighting men. And then he gave him a strategy. And when God gives us a strategy, we have to plan. We have to plan according to his word, not according to our feelings, not according to our emotions. But we need to set our plan in motion and develop our plan from an understanding of God's word. God keeps talking to him. He said, I've already delivered them into your hand. So the next step was for them to prepare the strategy. But listen to the strategy. He said, march around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sounding a long blast on the trumpet, have all the people give a loud shout, and then the wall of the city will collapse, and the people can go up, and every man straight in. Now, let's say that you're Joshua and you're listening to this. And you're thinking how we can arrange your catapults to throw boulders over the wall, and how can we do this, and how can we do that? What is our strategy? And God delivers something that is absolutely ridiculous to man's ears. He says, no, here's what I want you to do. I want you to march around the city once every day. And then on the seventh day, I want you to have 7 priests carry trumpets and take the ark. And on that seventh day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout, and the wall's going to fall down. Are you kidding me, God? Those walls are 40 feet high and 10 feet thick. You can't do that by blowing some trumpets. Let me tell you something. When it comes to strategy, to do something that God has called you to do, you listen to God. You plan according to His Word. You prepare the way He directs your heart from His Word. And let me tell you something. Obedience does not demand understanding. I don't know who I heard say that. It might have been Manly Beasley. I'm not sure. But let me just say it again, because I want you to get this. Obedience does not demand understanding. You don't have to understand why God is leading you in a certain direction in order for you to be obedient to it. Sometimes God's strategy is not palatable for us. It seems so different. But I want you to listen to what Joshua did. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priest and said to them, take up the Ark of the Covenant. And he told them exactly what God had told him. He just passed it on. And it says in verse 8, when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests did what they were supposed to do. And in let me get down to verse 12. Joshua got up early in the morning. The priests took up the Ark of the Lord. 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the Ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. And the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the Ark of the Lord while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned. They did this for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, they got up at daybreak, did the same thing. And it says down in verse 20, when the trumpet sounded, the people shouted. And at the sound of the trumpet, when the people gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed, so every man charged straight in, and they took the city. Archaeologists tell us those walls fell outward. All of them fell outward. God's strategy sounded strange to Joshua and to us, but God was their strength. So remember strength and remember strategy, and let God prepare you and plan you for whatever your Jericho is with His strategy and His strength. God bless you. We'll see you in the morning.